You've been listening to Tiny Desk Radio from NPR Music. I'm Ana Maria Sayer. Catch you next time. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity, regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org. From the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
Helen, my darling, please tell me a place in your heart I'll always find.
Russell Moore and Third Time Out join us on this week's Mountain Stage, along with Jack Blocker, Cole Quest and the City Pickers, Courtney Hartman, and the Critton Hollow String Band.
Hi, this is Russell Moore of Russell Moore and Third Time Out. Join us this week in live performance on Mountain Stage.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER.
You're listening to 88.3 FM WAER Syracuse, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
SportsNite, your home for all SU sports talk.
You know, whether it was a 5-goal win or just an overtime win, a win is a win, and especially in a loaded ACC, they're going to look back on this one and say, thank goodness we got a win.
There's just, the question marks are so many that it makes you think, what if we are in for a second-year hangover?
Autry is in obviously a bad situation because of all the backlash he's getting from the fans, because the pressure's high, right? But I also think he has a little bit of leeway.
Breaking down everything from around the hill.
They almost surrendered that lead in the fourth quarter, which is a concern of mine. I would have preferred to see a full 60-minute performance.
And giving hot takes along the way.
I'm just not convinced. Some of the transfers are promising, but if we look at what, national champions are made of, this team has none of that stuff.
It's Sports Night, and it starts right now. Welcome to Sports Night on WAER. We've got plenty to talk about. Luke Burgess joined alongside Andrew Delapiana, taking you all the way up until 9 o'clock this evening. Syracuse men's basketball has an off weekend after a tremendous upset victory over Tennessee back on Tuesday. Andrew, we have a lot to discuss. It's an exciting time to be a Syracuse men's basketball fan again, after it was not so much following that tournament in Las Vegas. Syracuse, of course, 0-3 against Iowa State, Kansas, and Houston. But the hope has started to seep back in now, of course, that the Orange go out on Tuesday and pick up a 2-point win in, I guess, the fashion that you would expect with the way that the team has played this year. Played great defense the whole way through, a low-scoring game.
Yeah, gritty is the word I keep coming back to about that game, just because, like you said, low scoring. We really didn't expect anything less from an Adrian Autry team right now, the way he's been talking about this level of intensity on defense. But to really come out after that Iowa State game, where you allow 90 points to get embarrassed in Game 3 of the Players Era Festival, to kind of hit the reset button, get your legs back underneath you, come back in front of the home fans and deliver that good of a victory over a top 15 team, to really save Adrian Autry's job, really, because you saw post-game reaction to this game meant a lot to Autry, these players as well, to really get a monkey off their back, if you will, because think about that conversation we had about that feeling after Houston, where everyone was so upbeat, so happy to see this team really feel like Syracuse basketball again, and then it just goes straight downhill in the final two games. Finally, a sense of confidence now after that Tennessee game.
Yeah, we'll talk plenty of Syracuse men's basketball tonight. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you can call us at 315-443-2011. Let us know your thoughts on the ongoing season, and we will break down more of that Tennessee game, the road ahead. But first, Andrew, I want to talk about Calvin Russell, because after a one-day delay of signing his letter of intent, late last night, Calvin Russell announced that he is coming to Syracuse, the highest-ranked Orange recruit in over 20 years, 5-star wide receiver from South Florida, and the best recruiting class in Syracuse football history. And now Fran Brown has delivered 3 of the highest-ranked recruiting classes in Syracuse football history in his first 3 years with the program. So I think, obviously, right now, the mindset around football in Syracuse is not strong. There's no question about that. Coming off of a 3-win season where the Orange went on to lose 8 games in a row at the end of the year. But this has to remedy a little bit. I guess it kind of pulls some salt out of the wound, if you will, with signing Calvin Russell, not letting him slip away, because, my goodness, had he slipped away,
oh my goodness,
that would have been a disaster.
I was really shocked yesterday when I get the alert around, 5, 6 o'clock, that Russell had officially signed with Syracuse, because I don't know if you're on Instagram on Wednesday where Calvin Russell's on his Instagram live, he's flashing the U, and I'm like,
yep.
This guy's going to go to Miami. He's going to flip. And I said it after the Notre Dame game. If Syracuse had a game that bad where you lose by 63 points, that game matters so much, because that's the brand you put on that Saturday game on national television. And you had 3 guys decommit after that game alone. Now you think in the back of your mind, oh my goodness, is this 5-star wide receiver after seeing that performance? And then you add on the fact you lost to
and
a one.
In the moment, he reaffirmed his commitment to Syracuse.
Yeah.
And you thought, okay, he's sticking around, but then go on and lose to BC. BC's only FBS win all season. It gets even worse.
And the questions start to loom back again. Like,
right.
Here we go again. Of like, Fran Brown has been so open, really, about his recruiting and how confident he's been. He said back on Wednesday, too, during that signing day press conference, that I'm confident. I'm really good at recruiting. I know exactly what I'm doing. But at the same time, when you have programs like Florida State, Miami, Michigan banging down your door with maybe some more money in their back pocket,
no question,
Calvin Russell could be looking at that saying, hey, this team just lost 9 games and lost 8 straight to end the season. I'm going somewhere where I can compete for a national championship. But luckily, he stays here in Syracuse. That might have saved Fran Brown his shop.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question by any means. I mean, I still think regardless of whether Calvin Russell goes elsewhere or comes to Syracuse as he did, I still think, Fran's going to have next season to prove that. But the hype around next season, I think, would be significantly decreased without a 5-star coming into the program. And I think that, regardless of the impact that Calvin Russell will make immediately, which may be a big impact, maybe not. Maybe he integrates himself into the team and he doesn't immediately gel. That happens with freshmen, no matter how highly recruited they are at times. You seem like you have something.
Yeah,
you want to say on that,
it's
though.
interesting, because think of the emphasis that Fran Brown put this season on playing freshmen and sophomores. I think the number of first-time starters this year was into the 20s, and I think looking back at that now, as we look at how the season has gone along and eventually has ended, Fran Brown did a better job than I think people expected of giving these guys experience against really good football teams. So when guys like Byron Washington, Yasin Willis, Steve Angeli come back for next season, you have a good core there, and then you add along the different pieces like Delorier, like a Samuel, like a Calvin Russell as well. This is a really good freshman class that I think is going to make an impact right away, just because of the presence that Fran Brown has set on this season alone about these young guys coming in and being confident to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think I keep going back to, Dimitri Samuel Jr. as well, another freshman who obviously grabbed a lot of headlines along with Antoine Delorier this year. If he's going to make an impact on the offensive side of the ball next season, because that was something that was very highly touted, I think it's just important to remember the reason I bring up will Russell contribute next year is, freshmen sometimes just don't find their role right away. I think there was probably a point where people expected Samuel to play both sides of the ball. He basically ended up just being a DB. I think he took single-digit snaps at wide receiver throughout
very
the year. So, maybe Russell is a down the depth chart a little bit, wide receiver, as he finds his footing in his first year. But I think likely now that he's here, the hype continues. I think he's probably going to start.
Yeah,
probably going to make a big impact next season.
Because think about the wide receiver room. Because again, there's still a lot of what ifs of guys that are coming back. We don't know about the future of someone like Jonte Cook or even Justice Ross Simmons. But
does Justice Ross Simmons have any eligibility?
No, I think is he a redshirt senior?
I'll check that. Yeah, you can keep.
But the point I'm getting at is the wide receiver depth this year was not phenomenal. Yes, granted, the quarterback controversy in the carousel all season long about who's actually going to be starting under center. Those guys didn't get a lot of help this year from that quarterback room. But what I'm really getting at is that Calvin Russell has the chance to be the certified number one stud in this offense just because of the caliber of player that he is.
Yep.
Number 2 wide receiver in all the country. He has to make an instant impact when he gets here next season because that is the expectation now when you bring in a 5-star. Syracuse hasn't seen that in quite a long time for a guy that steps in right away, makes that big of an impact, and jumps that next level just really in the freshman season alone. And I think that being at the wide receiver position too, now with Steve Angeli back, makes that even better too.
Yeah, and I think you have to think that the chance to have that impact and be such a key role in the offense is likely a big part of why Russell ended up coming to Syracuse aside from Fran Brown. I think the recruiting obviously plays a part in it, but the chance to be the guy, I think that has to be enticing.
And right away too, where it's not just at a bigger program like Michigan where maybe you sit 2 years and you transfer somewhere out where you see a little bit more tape at practice. But no, I think that point's great.
Yeah, and coming off of a 3-win season, obviously the momentum is down a little bit, but I think you also have to, as a recruit, and I'm sure he has people in his ear telling him, hey, look at what this offense did last year. Like, they're going to throw the ball 50 times a game potentially. You're going to have chances to make plays. And so I think to be the guy has to be enticing to good wide receiver prospects. If this offense, Syracuse's football offense that we saw with Kyle McCord, running the show, and for maybe like 2.5 games, Steve Angeli running the show, I think, that definitely has to be an appealing team to try and join and try and find your way into that offense. But it's exciting. Calvin Russell will be coming to Syracuse. If you have thoughts on Syracuse football and Calvin Russell's impact this season, you can let us know. 315-443-2011 is the number to call. But, Andrew, I do want to talk about basketball because, of course, that is the dominant storyline right now. Calvin Russell can wait. He'll be on the field next September, late August, whenever the season's going to start next year. But, we briefly touched on it at the start of the show just because I think that is the number one thing that's on people's minds. But Syracuse men's basketball with that massive upset win over Tennessee back on Tuesday. And now you look at the rest of the non-conference slate, and this is kind of what the question I want to pose to you. Obviously, the Orange win this game. Had they lost this game, there was a long conversation about whether March Madness is even reachable because you would need likely 16 wins in the ACC to have a statistical probable chance to make the NCAA tournament. That is not likely. I mean, the ACC seems to be quite a good conference.
And they're only down to 18 conference games, too, this year.
Right.
They took away 2 conference games.
So you basically have to have a near perfect – I mean, you're going to have to beat a North Carolina at least once. You'd have to keep it close with a Duke. You have to keep it close with other teams that are ranked like a Louisville.
The point you're getting at, though,
road.
is you have to steal games in order to get to 16 conference wins
just
against
to have
good teams.
Just to have
a chance.
A probable chance to make the NCAA tournament. So this win really, when you look at it now, with St. Joe's, Hofstra, Mercyhurst, Northeastern, and Stonehill coming up as the rest of the non-conference slate, this basically was the season. Is that unfair to say?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because your quad one opportunities going into your non-conference slate were, of course, your 3 games in Vegas, then your ACC-SEC challenge. You lost all 3 in Vegas, and then the questions start to come up. Can Adrian Autry get it done?
Right.
And he only had 2 quad one.
3 and 20 in quad one opportunities.
After that victory, of course, against Tennessee.
Yep.
But this was a massive win. It completely changes the outlook of the season of whether we're talking about Syracuse as an NCAA tournament team or not really. Because Houston, again, I hate to harp on that. It was so great that they were so close in that game. But I hate to break it to people. It doesn't matter because you lost the game.
Right.
Yeah, you had the chance to
well,
win
just look
the
at
game.
the results. I mean, they opened as 90th in the net.
Before that Tennessee game.
Before the Tennessee
Yeah.
game, after that
After
Vegas
Vegas.
tournament. I mean, you kept it close with two teams, a single-digit loss to, or
But that-
11-point loss to Kansas.
But that Iowa State game completely got rid of every single thing you did in the previous, 7 games beforehand of blowing out your Delaware States and Binghamton. Like that got completely erased.
Right. And I think there's some credence to the fact that it was a very tough draw out there. But
they got the toughest draw.
No
of the
question.
tournament. Yeah.
No question. They played 3 teams that are now ranked. Kansas was not ranked at the time. They have since climbed back into the rankings. They beat Kentucky earlier this week, same night that Syracuse beat Tennessee. But the question I want to ask you, and I think we could get into quite a long back and forth about this, is whether or not it really matters to be close if you're Syracuse basketball. Because I do think that the standard still, despite the layoff now of 4+ years, should be still to make the tournament. That should still be the expectation, despite the downfall from grace that this program has gone through over the last decade. I mean, there's a reason that you're playing at Tennessee 3 consecutive seasons. There's a reason you're going and playing in the most prestigious college basketball Feast Week tournament in the country. It's because the expectation is to at least be competitive and be in the conversation every year.
Well,
so I don't know that really a 4-point loss in overtime to Houston gets you much, like you said.
No.
Because if you go on and win one of those games against Kansas and Iowa State, then yeah, it's legit. But if you don't back it up with a win, then it doesn't mean much. And of course, now with this Tennessee game, I think those results start to get a little bit more relevance again.
I agree, because think about when you're at the end of the season, you're on Selection Sunday, and you're comparing resumes, right? Are you looking at teams that, they barely lost to a really good... No!
Right, no one talks about
Nobody cares because you lost the game.
Yep.
You only get the recognition if you win the game, and they didn't do that against Houston. Now you have a definitive victory on your resume against a top 15 team in Tennessee, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and keep in mind as well, an impressive victory. It was not clean basketball. Both teams.
That
turned the
first
ball
half
over.
was.
Well, both halves really were pretty bad.
First half was
turnover-wise.
pretty bad.
I mean, they had more than 30 combined turnovers for the game, but a Tennessee offense that's averaging damn near 90 points a game, and to hold them to 60 points in the Dome, I think. First of all, I want to give a massive recognition, and Adrian Autry did as well, to the JMA Wireless Dome fans showing out and providing a fantastic atmosphere to play in. That was something that was not present in Vegas. Just only a few thousand fans in the building, which is naturally going to happen with one of those tournaments. But to see the contrast and see the energy that a game like this can bring when there is a home crowd. And keep in mind as well, this was the first time that Tennessee had to play a true road game all season. So they go on the road for the first time, and I think it definitely had an effect. Syracuse fed off of that crowd energy, and it definitely plays to the Orange's advantage to have a disruptive game with both teams turning the ball over a bunch. And I think both teams would prefer that didn't happen. But if it's going to happen, the team that has stifled Houston offensively, absolutely, I think it can benefit Syracuse, and I think it ended up doing exactly that because, they were just, think about Nate Ament, for example. The guy goes on the road for his first ever true road game in college, and, he looked completely lost.
Yeah.
I think he had 85% of his points came from the free throw line.
Oh.
He had, 3 field goals for the entire game. So, the guy was shut down, and, he's a potential lottery pick, projected inside the top 10 right now. So I think you have to give Syracuse a lot of credit for the way that they battled at home. And now, there is still an expectation. I think as a fan or as someone covering the team, it maybe is easy to brush these non-conference games to the side, but there is still something to be had here. You still need to go out and blow out these teams, really, and show that you are the dominant side before ACC play starts at the end of the month.
And I think important to note as well that the ACC is significantly better this year than last year. Is that safe to say?
No question. What did the ACC have in the ACC Challenge last year? 2 wins?
I think it was 15-2 or something.
Yeah, I think
this
year
it was
like
it wasn't even
separation
close.
of 2 games, I want to say. I think the SEC pulled back ahead in night 2 is what I saw.
Yeah, because I know the ACC won on that first
But
night.
it was very close.
But the ACC
9-7. The SEC won the challenge this year,
Yeah.
whereas last year the ACC had only 2 wins.
Yeah. So
it's
I mean,
drastically improved.
the SEC had a historic year last year with the teams they got in the tournament, but
No question.
Still, the ACC is a lot. I mean, you look at a team like Miami starting to make a comeback. They're popping up a lot more in that net ranking.
Gosh, and they were awful last year.
They were the worst team in the country. And Syracuse lost to them.
Yeah.
On the road.
Yep.
But I think that just shows you how good that conference is starting to become. So, yes, you can look down the road at these other ACC games and say, these are important. These are going to be quad 1, quad 2 chances. But to now take that out of conference, especially, too, when Syracuse has broken away, the ACC, I should say, from that ACC Big Ten challenge that was a couple of years ago. I think now integrating the SEC into that makes that look a little bit better for the ACC because that conference is starting to become one of the premier in the country. And to have, of course, a win like this that you can look back now at the rest of the season and say, hey, we beat a really good basketball team. We are a really good basketball team. I think that gives people plenty of confidence moving forward.
Yeah, I was looking back 2 seasons ago at the 23-24 season, which Syracuse was Judemintz's last season for anyone who's, needs a refresher. They were 10-3 at the point of the season, I guess if you're comparing it the end of December going into January. If they go ahead and sweep the rest of this non-conference slate, they'll be 10-3.
Yeah.
So the season is not won.
Oh, of course not. You still got a long way to go.
Very good that year as well. 2 seasons ago, well, not very good, but it was a stronger conference than it was a year ago, and Syracuse really underperformed in conference play that year. I mean, they lost by almost 40 points to North Carolina. They lost by 20 to Duke at the start of the new year. And that was a game, actually, that game was super close at halftime. They ended up getting blown out in the second half. Lost by Florida State to double digits. Clemson by double digits in the Dome. Lost to Georgia Tech by 5, and then finished the season with a loss against Clemson by 15. So, the ACC this year is revitalized, and I think it's not nearly as much like last season where a loss in the ACC a lot of the time, 85% of the time, looked pretty bad.
I mean, they got 4 teams in the tournament last year.
Right.
It was the top 4 seeds in the conference tournament.
This year, it's a challenge of a conference to play in, and I think there's going to be some really exciting games down the stretch that fans should be really juiced up for. If this team continues to showcase that defensive suffocation, especially in home games, you roll around to Clemson on the 31st, I think it's going to be an awesome atmosphere.
And I think, too, and Rick Barnes said it at the end of that Tennessee game as well. He said, this is the best Syracuse defensive team we've seen in the last couple of years. And I think he hit the nail on the head by that point. Rick Barnes is, one of the greatest coaches in college basketball, and for him to give that recognition of this team, I really think says a lot. Someone who continues to stand out for me on that defensive end, I really think it's William Kyle.
Oh,
he has been just a breath of fresh air compared to Eddie Lampkin last year.
How about the fact now Syracuse at this point of the season is 5-3. They've played 8 games. William Kyle already has more blocks this season than anyone on the team did last year at this point of the year.
Yeah, I mean, what did Kai and Anthony say at the end? Anyone meet him at the rim? Yeah, he's blocking you. Yeah.
Well, he said he's going to dunk on you, but blocking
Same
is
thing,
correct
yeah,
as
on the
well.
defensive end, yeah.
I mean, William Kyle is an awful free throw shooter, but my goodness, is he a breath of fresh air for the way that this team plays. And I do think that in some ways he has been an X factor. Because you look to those Vegas games, even the ones that were competitive, Nate George did not play very well.
No.
J.J. Starling, pretty mediocre. Kai and Anthony had probably his worst 3 stretches of games out of the season so far. William Kyle was consistent with what he did. He was good defensively in that tournament. I think he kept Syracuse in that Houston game for a long time. And Syracuse can compete defensively with any team in the country. There's no question about that. If you have anything you want to say about Syracuse men's basketball before we wrap this conversation up, let us know. 315-443-2011 is the number to call to speak with Andrew and I. We're going to be bringing on our women's basketball reporter, Cole Purvis, after the break, but we still have a couple more minutes talking about Syracuse men's basketball. I do briefly want to touch on the ACC a little bit more because I'm interested what you think is a realistic win total for the ACC this season. I think you say you go the rest of the way in non-conference play, win out, so 10-3 entering ACC play. I mean, do you think that 14 wins is realistic? 13 wins? I think 14, it probably gets you into the tournament now with that Tennessee win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends too on who those four losses are too, because you play North Carolina twice.
Yep.
That might be a little bit tricky.
No question. That will be
Duke on the road, Louisville on the road.
Oh man, if Syracuse's defense is still playing as well as it is now in March, that could be a very entertaining matchup to watch with Louisville's high-flying offense. Of course, they just lost to Arkansas.
And I think, too, it helps that you have a rather easy start to conference play with Clemson, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Florida State, BC. Virginia Tech's getting a little bit better. But I think those first 5 games or so, I mean, I don't want to say you're easily looking at a 5-0 start in conference play, but if you go,
I think you might have to be.
Yeah, because
it gets hard really fast.
Oh, it does. That
After
stretch,
that, Miami, NC State, 1 game against Notre Dame, but then UNC,
Virginia's back this year too. They're good.
Duke right on the horizon. Then another game against UNC. I mean, the finish is pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
Duke, North Carolina, Louisville in the stretch of 4 games. That's going to be, a really challenging stretch for Syracuse. So I think you really have to pick up your wins while you can. But there is excitement, no question. I think, and rightfully so.
I think it's just there's hope. There's hope
to go out and look as competitive as they did against the Houston, and then to back that performance up, like I was saying earlier. Now to go out against Tennessee and actually win the game in a situation too where, by the way, they easily could have lost it down the stretch. William Kyle missed that first free throw,
throws,
makes the second one, but then it's only a 1-point lead. And they turned it over, and Syracuse got a rebound. Originally, they stopped the clock with 0.1 second, and then reset it to basically a second. And J.J. Starling gets fouled. They send him back to the line. He makes a free throw, and the rest went on.
I mean, Tennessee got a kind of a good look, to be honest.
Amen
with
had the ball
0.7
right under the bucket and easily could have tied that and sent it to overtime. But Syracuse comes away with a win, and like you said, Andrew, now there is hope heading into ACC play, and I think that's exciting for a lot of people. We're going to talk about Syracuse women's basketball, another team that has been performing, I think, above expectations. No question about that. After a short break, the Orange just took down Auburn a couple of days ago in their own iteration of the ACC SEC Challenge. We're bringing on our guy, Cole Purvis, our women's basketball reporter, who's going to break down what he has seen from the team recently. Of course, no game for Syracuse men's basketball this weekend, so you have to tuck in and listen to some Syracuse women's basketball on our sister station, Z89, the Orange going on the road to take on SMU. We'll talk about that and more around Felicia Leggett-Jack's team on the other side of the break. It's Sports Night on WAER.
WAER's weekly e-newsletter is back, and it's keeping you in the loop.
Get the week's top news, Syracuse sports, new podcast drops, and events happening around Central New York all in one quick read.
Subscribe to get this week's top stories, new podcast episodes, and more in one convenient place, sent every Friday.
WAER's weekly e-newsletter, In the Loop, is sent straight to your inbox every Friday.
Sign up to receive our refreshed and redesigned e-newsletter, In the Loop.
Stay informed, stay connected, and stay in the loop
on WAER.org.
What do you need for a great holiday? Food, family, friends, and festive music. The first few are up to you, but you can let us take care of that last part with a special holiday playlist of classic Christmas tunes and new favorites from artists like Andrew Bird, Los Lobos, Carole King, The Bird and the Bee, and lots more. Join us for a holiday celebration from World Cafe.
Saturday, December 20th at 1.
Recently on Wait, Wait, Zach Zimmerman marveled at the discovery of the largest spider web ever found.
Did it say some, really, that is some pig.
I'm Peter Sagal. Join us to hear our commentary on the interesting creatures in the week's news, plus Andy Richter dishing about his recent run on Dancing with the Stars. That's Wait, Wait from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Welcome back into Sports Night here from WAER alongside Luke Burgess, Andrew Della Piana, taking you up till 9 o'clock, and now we're joined by Cole Purvis talking a little Syracuse women's basketball. Cole, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Cuse, rolling right now for Felicia Leggett-Jack, 7-1 right now. If you want to join the conversation about FLJ's team right now, please do so. 315-443-2011. We're also on X and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. And a big win, we were just talking about the men's team getting a victory in the ACC-SEC Challenge. And then on the women's side, picking up a big win in overtime against Auburn. Don't look now, but this team it's rolling right now, I would say.
And it's a significant win because a night after the men's team goes out and gets its signature win of the season, the pressure kind of flipped to the women, and they absolutely delivered. To have not one but two teams pull out gritty wins over SEC opponents is really huge. For the attitude surrounding both basketball programs, I think it was a really resilient win for Felicia Leggett-Jack's team. SU was up 5 minutes with 6 to play. They had a lead. It might not sound like a commanding lead, but points were hard to come by. And then Auburn comes back to tie it, and then SU has to go into overtime. It finds that second gear again and comes away with the OT win.
And I was surprised, too, because Syracuse went 0 for 16 from 3 in this game.
Yep.
The worst from 3 in program history, and they still won against an SEC opponent. I mean,
by the way, no slouch either. I mean, Auburn is not ranked, but they were 8-0 to start the year. They lost the game by 5 to Oregon. Syracuse is their biggest loss of the season.
I will say they were 15th in the SEC preseason poll. So although they are an SEC opponent, they weren't the strongest one at that.
But they've beat
still a
Power
great win.
4 teams this season. They have a win against Cal, had a win against Rutgers. Once again, I'm not talking necessarily about the quality of those opponents, but this is an SEC team that was 8-0. You can only beat the teams that you have on the schedule. So they had played well. They had scorers who were consistently having very good nights. Going into that game, Koulibaly, she was pretty good. She's been averaging double digits this season, and as a freshman as well. And Syracuse delivered. I think down the stretch they played really tough. Auburn went up a little bit in overtime as well, and got a couple of defensive stops. And like Andrew mentioned, to win this game and not have a three-pointer is unbelievable. And
Wild.
Syracuse now smoked Utah in the Connecticut games, and then went on the next game against Michigan. Now, that's a top 10 team in the country.
That's top 5, I think, now.
Yeah. And sure, gets blown out, but it's a top 5 team in the country. I think, that is the expectation maybe early on in the season, especially with a lot of new pieces playing new roles and the lack of three-point shooting. But I got to quickly bring up, Sophie Burrows, what has happened to her three-point shooting this season? 11% from downtown? That is unbelievable.
That's not
Cole.
good.
She's been the best three-point shooter on the team. I guess Georgia Woolley maybe last season, but Georgia Woolley never really materialized too much as a three-point shooter.
Yeah, 11% from deep, like you said, but I think it shows that SU hasn't hit its ceiling yet. If Sophie Burrows can find her stride from 3, start to get some more buckets, she's kind of struggled to fit into her role a little bit as we start the year because Syracuse has 2 dominant scorers on this team, and so Burrows has reduced her role in those 2 scorers that I mentioned, Dominique Darius and Layla Felia. They are both bona fide studs at putting the ball in the bucket, and I think in this Auburn game, it was so impressive for Felia to still come away with 14 points after not making a field goal in the first half. It wasn't her night, but she stayed in it, and that speaks to the resiliency of this team, and played the role of a closer, had a couple of baskets in overtime to bring this game home and get the win for her team.
And I think it's important the role that Felia is taking on as well. We even mention, Uche Azoje as well, down low, has been an important scorer as well. Because you think about what role Georgia Woolley had to play last year when Deasia Fair left. She was the only scorer on the team. Maybe Sophie Burrows was there sometimes.
Sophie Burrows averaged 12 points a game last season. I just want to be clear, just to illustrate how bad the start has been. Not to say that she can't pick it up again, but right now, Sophie Burrows was a 40% three-point shooter last season. But 40%, and she averaged double figures and started every game.
But she has help around her now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
She's not forced into a role that I feel Georgia Woolley was last year.
Maybe not.
Where it's just, all right.
Sophie Burrows is just not the leader of this team. She might be the leader in the locker room, but, there is no question that she is not she's not the scoring leader.
No, of
Dominique
course not.
Darius and Layla Filia and Uche Azoje are all scoring at a higher clip than she is. You're saying maybe like she's struggling to find her role.
Yeah,
now.
the shooting woes for her, I think, might be kind of a mental thing. I saw in that game against Howard, she hit a 3 at the end of the third quarter, and the bench just exploded. You could tell they were so happy for her to finally hit a deep 3, and I think once she gets it rolling, this offense can be even more dangerous. But you mentioned the fact that Georgia Woolley had to play such a big role and shoulder such a big load last year. Felicia Leggett-Jack had to go out and find her replacement. She didn't just do that. She basically got 2 Georgia Woolley replacements in the 2 guards in the backcourt, which is so impressive
Layla
for me.
Filia is, no disrespect to Georgia Woolley, but
yes.
Layla Filia is
a
a
lot
much better scorer than Georgia Woolley ever was. I mean, Georgia Woolley was a good shooter, but not a good ball handler.
Yeah, it was kind of trying
Layla
to
Filia has that slashing ability.
a square peg into a round hole last year with Georgia Woolley having to create off the dribble instead of being more of a catch and shoot player. Now you have the 2 players in Filia and Darius that can really create off the dribble.
And I think it's important, too, that you mentioned Filia, how she came on strong late in that fourth quarter and overtime as well, because that's something Syracuse has been missing a lot since Deasia Fair graduated, because Georgia Woolley was not the go-to player in the fourth quarter.
Well, just look at the last, not to interrupt your point, but look at the last game of the season against Boston College, a game that Syracuse had a chance to win last year in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, and they blew that
entire
lead
way down the stretch.
That's right.
And they needed a bucket, had plenty of time to get it, got 3 defensive stops, and no one could score.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have anyone to go to, so they forced the ball to Georgia Woolley. And unfortunately, she was never a player at Syracuse, at least. At Buffalo, maybe a bit of a different story, but she was never a player at Syracuse that consistently was generating offense one-on-one.
Yeah.
And there is a difference now. They do have that. I don't know that Sophie Burrows, maybe she needs to take a step back, play a little bit more of just a catch and shoot role, because there are still a lot of offensive sets that are designed to get her involved.
And she can benefit from Dominique Darius's playmaking. Darius started overtime the other day with 2 incredible shots. She had kind of a double clutch layup, a really impressive look, and then a fall-away mid-range J that looked really smooth. She's a player that can score the ball herself, but also distribute really well. I love when she grabs the ball in transition. She sprints up the floor. She always has her eyes up looking for those shooters on the perimeter, and that's where Sophie Burrows can benefit from having a playmaker like her.
And 2, where, we've talked about Burrows' struggle from the arc. 0 for 7 against Michigan. 1 for 6 against Howard, goes 0 for 4 against Auburn. But, again, she still had 11 points in the game. She's been effective, too, in other places on the floor.
Yeah, you have to give her credit. She, in her sophomore year last year and now her junior season, has become a much better rebounder. And she has size. She's 6'2". As a guard, and she has used that size more effectively. Now, I think the fact that she's not playing as much so far this season is affecting the fact that she's not grabbing as many rebounds. She's still averaging more than 4 a game, whereas last year she was just over 5. But, her assists have gone up this year as well, so she's passing the ball more. I think she is a player that recognizes her role, and that's why I kind of bring up the point to you, Cole, and you, Andrew, maybe there is a reality where she just has to kind of be less involved in the offense.
And after that Michigan
to have
game,
a catch and shoot role.
After that Michigan game in which SU got throttled, Coach Felicia Leggett-Jack called her out saying she got to figure it out or I got to sub her out. That's the thing about the Syracuse team this year. There's more depth. There's more depth on the squad, so there's less margin for error for these players like Sophie Burrows who have been getting consistent minutes but are struggling. There are players down the line that could take her spot and fulfill those minutes if she's not scoring the ball.
And I think that depth, too, is helping their defense as well. Whereas Syracuse made the largest improvement from last year to this year, the Orange at 7-1 right now. Call in 315-443-2011. Luke Burgess, Andrew Delapiana, Cole Purvis here on SportsNite, taking you up until 9 o'clock, because this feels eerily similar right now to what Adrian Autry's doing with the men's team, where the defense just looks so much better than last year. And I think those pieces, like you mentioned, whether it's Uche or whether it's Filia or whether it's Burrows or even Darius, too, on the defensive end, this team just looks a lot more connected than they have in the previous seasons.
Yeah, I think it starts, a huge part of it is what they've done with acquiring some size that, is mobile. Like, Uche Azoje has been a game changer so far this year with what she can do, grabbing rebounds consistently. And, last year there were a lot of issues with injuries in terms of, the big players. Like Kyra Wood was constantly injured. Isa Verajao was injured a lot.
Same thing with Sanaya Wilson.
There was never that consistency down low, and I think there was just struggles with rebounding. But like if you look at this season, Azoje 13 rebounds last game, 9 rebounds the game before that, 10 rebounds, 6 rebounds she led the team. But you've also got Akimba Walla who led the team in rebounds against Wagner, and that was a Wagner team that just was not very good, to be quite honest.
Aurora Almon too is another big off the bench that's shown some flashes.
Yeah, and the freshman that they brought out as well. I'm blanking on the name right now. I'll come to it. But the freshman from Connecticut who was the Gatorade Player of the Year in
Camden Nelson.
Yeah, Camden Nelson.
She's been plugged in the starting lineup a couple times.
Right, and she has fit right in. She's done a good job creating in roles, and they've got Jasmine Cooper as well, who's played a little bit. I feel everyone is a little bit more aware of how they can win some games this year, and I think you got to give a lot of credit to Felicia Leggett-Jack for that reason, because she has recognized that there needs to be a little bit of a change. Last year was really bad, and she brought in some pieces that can contribute, and you're seeing the results.
And how about a diamond in the rough in Uche Azoje? I look at her, and she's a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams with the size that she has, and the last 3 games have been incredible. A double-double versus Michigan, a career-high 20 points versus Howard, and then follow that up with a 16-point double-double versus Auburn. She's finding her stride, and FLJ said it after one of the games. If she's passing the ball, she's subbed out of the game too. Her job is to operate on the block and score in the post. She's got such good footwork. The touch around the rim is excellent, but the shot blocking is the most impressive part of her game. Not just around the rim. She'll step out on the perimeter and swat shots away. She barely has to jump sometimes to block these shots. That's how tall she is, and it really makes things a lot tougher for opposing offenses on the three-point line.
And when Coach Jack mentioned too, I forget after what game it was, but she said Azoje could evolve into a Paige Beckers or a Hannah Hidalgo type talent, and I'm sitting there. I'm sorry, who?
Different positions, first of all.
Hidalgo and Beckers from But look, that would make her one of the best program players ever.
Yeah.
But look, I like Cole mentioned,
and you know how much
she's
Coach
backed it
Jack
up.
Loves Deasia Fair as well.
Exactly.
So to say that is some high praise.
She has backed it up. 16 points, 13 boards, 5 blocks against Auburn, and that was after she won ACC Rookie of the Week last week. But I really think she's quietly really becoming one of Syracuse's best players. But once your coach throws that out, you got to execute.
Oh, yeah. The pressure is immediately ramped up. I do want to bring up as well, I think a huge difference, and it all relates to this. Last year, Syracuse was an awful rebounding team. They were getting out-rebounded almost every game. They were averaging 38 boards a game. This season so far, averaging 42. So you're already seeing the jump. They've out-rebounded more than half of their opponents so far this season, and I think that makes a huge difference. And then when you have guards who can take it in transition, use the rebounding that you're getting them, and actually score the ball because they have those quick twitch ball handling skills that, quite honestly, just were not present last season. I do think that's the difference so far this year, because you have to be able to capitalize in those situations late in the game when you have to score in a pinch. And I think that was what won them this game against Auburn.
Yeah, they're strong at every level of the floor, especially defensively. We talked about Azoje down low and the presence that she has, but then on the perimeter, just great athletes and better than they had last year, quicker to the ball. You talk about Layla Felia and Dominique Darius, a lot of lateral quickness to be effective guarding some of the guards on the other team, and it's shown in the final scores. They held Wagner to just 29 points a few weeks ago, which is almost unthinkable. Also,
that Wagner team was pretty bad.
They scored
they were pretty
4
bad,
points in the first quarter. I didn't even know that was humanly possible.
That's credit to Syracuse, too, though.
No, it is. They made them very uncomfortable.
And then allowing only 49 to Utah, that's a power conference team. And then just 60 to Auburn, an SEC opponent. And keep in mind that game went into overtime, so they had 5 more minutes to score the ball. So at every level of the floor, there are threats defensively, and I can't wait to see this team unleashed in conference play.
But still, 27 turnovers, 15 steals. They didn't make a single 3 in the game.
I know, it's unbelievable.
It reminds me, remember when men's basketball, they went 0 for, 9 against Notre Dame? And that was still a close game.
Last year, yeah. Wow.
But even still, the way the game has even evolved into the three-point shot, you go 0 for 16, you still win the game.
Unbelievable.
You got to be doing something right on the defensive end.
Yeah, Cole, I wanted to ask you, because you've been paying attention to what this team's been doing. I know we mentioned the bench and that there are some pieces who have been contributing, but I look at this Auburn game box score, only 1 field goal off the bench.
Yep.
4 points total. the bench, if they're going to be competitive once ACC play rolls around, which the ACC may be a little bit weaker in the women's game this year than people thought. Duke, not as good as they thought. They've plummeted out of the rankings, had an awful Players Era festival. And they were one of the 4 teams that got included on the women's side and got blown out. You look up and down the schedule, the only ranked teams right now, Syracuse plays in conference play, North Carolina on the road, Louisville at home, and Notre Dame on the road. I mean, what does the bench have to do in order to actually meaningfully contribute? Because you can't have 4 points off the bench when you're playing ranked teams.
It's a lot of players that can do the dirty work, but not necessarily score the ball. And I think you're going to need to see players like Aurora Almon and Big O Akinbawala score the ball off the bench a little bit more. And I think the one thing that might hold this team back from eventually making the NCAA tournament is that three-point shooting and the lack of offensive success. That has to go up. Last in the ACC in both threes made and three-point percentage right now. That's where the game is going, and if you can't hit threes, you're not going to make the tournament. So although it's a good start, there are plenty of things that this team needs to work on.
And you look at this bench pieces of players like Angelica Velez or Journey Thompson or even Shai Hawkins, who is kind of had a solid freshman season, trying to work her way now is into a sophomore.
She did start this game, only played 13 minutes.
I think there is definitely, though, a much larger drop-off from these starters to this bench, and I think a lot of people are expecting, because even the name Maddie Potts, I feel like she was someone who came in with a little bit of talent.
She didn't play
as a freshman. I mean, she's only played in about 75% of the game so far this season. Like I thought she was going to take a massive jump.
Yeah.
I know Olivia Schmidt was
she's
hurt.
someone who can shoot the three, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she struggled from three this season as well.
Yeah.
And even someone like Olivia Schmidt, who's been dealing with injuries, she could have been a good backup guard as well. But I mean, you just go down the bench of players of who else is going to step up for this team that isn't in the starting lineup? And I think that's where questions start to come in a little bit more.
It's puzzling because these players that are advertised as three-point shooters aren't getting it done from beyond the arc. But I will say, to your point about how there's a big drop-off between the starting lineup and the bench, that's almost a good thing, because it shows that there's more talent in the starting lineup and that the lineup last year just wasn't as good.
I don't know about that, because think about
you don't think there's more talent in the starting
lineup.
No,
that's not what we're saying.
You're saying you need depth if you're going to be an NCAA tournament team, because think about once you get into the later stages of the season when tired and injuries start to come in a little bit.
Look at what the lack of depth just did to Syracuse football season.
You need depth, but at the end of the day, it's more important to have a good starting lineup.
Well, last year they just had neither. So you're right.
They had neither.
You're right, Cole. It is better to have a good starting five than to have not a good starting five and no depth.
At least they have one of the two this year.
Yeah, no question.
And that's why there's at least a little bit more hope than last year.
I think another thing that impressed me from this game was, Dominique Darius, who led the team in scoring, 8 of 9 from the foul line, getting it done when they get fouled, because naturally Auburn.
I got to teach the men's team now. That might be the next step.
They realized that Syracuse cannot shoot the three, so they packed the paint, and Syracuse made its foul shots. I mean, the starters, no one missed more than one free throw. Actually, everyone missed one exactly. So I guess 5 missed for the game, but a ton of attempts as well. 6 of 7 for Layla Filia, 8 of 9 for Darius, 3 of 4 for Burrows, 1 of 2 for Hawkins, and 2 of 3 for Uche. So even, the bigger players normally playing in the paint, getting it done. The bench was 100%. Shooting 81% from the line when you shoot nearly 30 free throws is huge.
I'll tell you what, though. It was a nail-biter at the end of that Auburn game. Sophie Burrows goes to the line with her team down by 1. She misses the first free throw, and then your heart just sinks as a Syracuse fan. Gets the second one to go, and then Auburn goes down and misses a relatively easy floater that they probably should have hit, and that would have won the game. So it was definitely a nail-biting end to that game for sure.
Yeah, big win for Syracuse against Auburn. Now they turn the page to SMU coming up on Sunday. How are the Orange fare down in Dallas here on Sports Night? We'll be up until 9 o'clock. Call in about your thoughts about the Mustangs in the Orange. 315-443-2011. Luke Burgess, Andrew Delpiana, Cole Purvis here on Sports Night. And that game could be a little bit interesting, because you think about
SMU is such an interesting team.
Because think about the matchup that happened.
Yeah.
Think about the matchup that happened last year between these two teams, where it was back and forth. That was at the start of the new year.
Yep.
And again, this is just a puzzling SMU team.
Yeah, Andrew, I'll ask you a question about SMU. Do you know what was unique about that game against Syracuse on January 6th.
Was that their only ACC win?
Nope,
No.
it was their last win of the season. They did not win another game for the rest of the year.
Oh, that's a terrible
They
look.
proceeded to fire their coach, and they now have a new coach who's come over from Arizona and has, took the Wildcats to the national championship game in 2021. Now, there's been a little bit of a struggle adjustment period so far this season, but I think you see the vision. Adia Barnes comes over as the head coach for SMU in her first year. And the other unique thing about this team is there is literally not a single returner.
Yep.
They have more players that played at Arizona last season than they do that
That's
played
impressive.
at SMU last season.
That's impressive.
She took a lot of players over, including
A ton.
Tanya Ja, who had 22 in their ACC-SEC Challenge win over Arkansas.
Yeah, it is insane. I mean, it is a completely new roster. And, I mean, what a crazy amount of turnover, because obviously with the transition into Power 4 last year, it was a roster that basically more than half the team wasn't there the previous season. And now you have your coach fired, you restart with a new coach, and you've got an entirely new roster again. So the team struggled last year, and now it's like, I don't think anyone really knows what to make of them right now because they've got some talented pieces. Arizona wasn't great last season, but
that was after Syracuse beat them in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago down in UConn. Yeah.
And has historically been a good team over the last 10 years. She was there for 9 seasons, I want to say off the top of my head. But now, I mean, this roster probably coming into form still a little bit. I think Syracuse is going to catch them at a good time because when you look up and down the sheet, like there are some talented scorers, players who scored in double figures last year. They've got a player off the bench who's averaging 14 right now. They've kind of been messing around with the starting lineup a lot too. So I think it begs the question, like, you know, they might get a lot better as the year goes on, but right now I think Syracuse has an edge.
It's not a team to overlook, but I do think Syracuse should win and win convincingly. SMU's lost to the likes of Grand Canyon, North Texas, St.
they had
Louis.
some bad losses.
So this has to be a team that you go in and win, considering you're coming off of a victory over an SEC opponent. And it would be a really, really good start to conference play for the Orange to get kind of a feel-good win by double digits, continue to dominate defensively as you have so far this season.
I will say one thing. I think you cannot overlook this SMU team because of what happened last year. Because it is literally an entirely different staff, an entirely different team.
Yeah.
And I think it is easy to do that because they haven't started with the best record. Because, you know, as a player, you're probably not diving deep into the transfer portal news. Like, you know that last year this team beat you by 1 and then they were awful. But this is just a completely different squad with a completely different staff. They're playing with a new identity too. So it's going to be interesting to watch, but Syracuse, I think, has like I said before, a really good chance to start ACC play with a win just because it's a team that's still finding its rhythm.
Yeah, that game takes place on Sunday down in Dallas. That one should be a lot of fun in the ACC opener for both teams. Cole, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take another break here on Sports Night. Just about 10 more minutes of programming, but when we come back, we'll take things to Tennessee Ice Pavilion. Syracuse women's ice hockey starting their weekend series against Robert Morris on the other side.
Hi, this is David Gans, host of the Grateful Dead Hour, the weekly audio postcard from the wide musical world of America's best-loved band. Join me for the Grateful Dead Hour Saturday afternoons at 5 on WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Saturdays at 5 on 88.3 WAER.
And streaming live on WAER.org.
Tobias Jesso Jr. has written perfect pop songs for other artists like Adele and Justin Bieber, but when it comes to his own music, he embraces the imperfections.
It was the first song I finished recording. Then I turned around and looked, and I'm like, bah! Like I didn't turn on the mic. It's just like flatlined, you know?
Tobias Jesso Jr. on his new album, Shine, Saturday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Saturday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER.
I'm Ana Maria Sayre. Next time on Tiny Desk Radio. The sextet known as Y Music. Experimental pop from Julia Holter. Plus, visionary songs of love from Georgia Ann Muldrow. That's next time on Tiny Desk Radio from NPR Music.
Friday evenings at 7 and Saturdays at 4.
Welcome back to Sports Night. 8 minutes to go. talking all sorts of SU athletics as we wrap things up. We've talked women's basketball. We've talked men's basketball. We've talked Calvin Russell and the football team. I'm Luke Burgess alongside Andrew Delapiana. If you want to get involved in the conversation, talk about anything you like surrounding Syracuse sports, maybe even the Crunch in action tonight.
Brandon
down at
Halverson just
Upstate
got
Medical University Arena.
Got the call up. You see that?
I didn't actually.
Yeah, it happened yesterday.
He played a couple of NHL games last season as
Mhm.
well with the Lightning. Whatever you want to talk about, we're here to talk about it too. For the next 7 minutes, 315-443-2011 is the number to call if you want to get your voice heard as we close up shop here. But we will stay with hockey as well here as we move into our final segment of the show. Syracuse women's ice hockey, though, they're playing against Robert Morris. The game might be over. I think it is over.
They lost 1-0.
Oh,
yeah,
a heartbreaker at Kennedy Ice Pavilion. Andrew, you've been around the women's team a little bit this season. It seems like the trend over the last few years has been consistent improvement. Of course, this year is ultra weird because Brittany Smith is basically away from the program for most of the year. Not yet, permanently, but is going to be away from the program pretty much the entirety of the spring session. If you're not aware of how women's college hockey works, they're taking a big break after this weekend. They don't play for almost a month, and then they'll come back with a couple of non-conference games and then get back into, what is it now, AHA? Not CHA anymore.
Nope.
Rest in
That's
peace to the CHA. But
they merged with the
AHA play in January.
January 2nd, that
and
first
they
game.
will not have Brittany Smith at the helm. Heather Farrell, the associate head coach now, will take over as the full-time coach, which is really strange. But the team has continued to kind of progress in a better direction where a few years ago they were not competitive whatsoever with these programs. Now, 8-10-2, and I don't know if that's including tonight or not.
No, that drops them back 3 games.
8-11-2 on the season, but you see the competitive nature. I mean, they just had a win over Cornell, which was a huge
Yeah, that
win.
was massive.
Unbelievable. And it's kind of interesting to see where this program stands now in a season that is, when you look back at it, is going to be very interesting without your head coach for most of the year.
And like you said, it's a weird spot right now, but I really think they are playing some of their best hockey right now under Brittany Smith. And this situation with her is weird because an assistant coach for Team Candy and the Olympics coming up in February. So like you said, she'll be gone for most of the second half of the season, which gets going again into early January. I mean, are they even playing hockey at the Olympics? I know the rinks aren't aren't even ready in Milan.
What were they saying, that the rinks are like not deep enough?
They're not wide enough.
Because they have to be Olympic.
Correct.
I mean, they don't really
bigger
play
than NHL
hockey
size.
in Italy.
What? You saw the Mighty Ducks movie. Yes, they do.
Okay, whatever you say. I honestly, it's been a long time since I've seen Mighty
No,
Ducks.
but we don't know if they're playing hockey in Milan anymore because the rinks are too small.
Well, so you have to consider, though, they also have the skiing events in the Alps in a completely different town.
That's true.
So, because Milan's obviously like northern Italy, but below the Alps. And I think they're like almost crossing over into Switzerland with where they're doing some of the, snowboarding and skiing events.
Yeah.
I have to wonder, Switzerland, they play a little bit more hockey. Not much, but they've got a national team that competes. Maybe you get some of the hockey games in Zurich or something. What do you think?
I think they should just put the rink at the Coliseum and let's just have some fun.
I saw something on
Wanna
X
do that?
about that
Yeah.
where they were talking about. I mean, that'd be pretty cool.
It would be.
I would love to see that. Brittany Smith in the second pillar or whatever.
Oh
sitting
yeah,
on the stone.
as it gets steeper
like a
and
little
steeper
bit
up,
Harvard Stadium-esque.
Oh, that'd be cool.
and
In the game, Harvard. Yeah. Oh, phenomenal stuff. You got me reminiscing now of Harvard Stadium. But that's beside the point because of how well I think Syracuse has played so far to start this year. And I think this loss tonight is frustrating because Maggie Hatch, for Robert Morris, their goaltender, has not been one of the better goaltenders in the conference this year. She had a 36-save shutout tonight for a Syracuse team that dominated, really. RPI last weekend. You mentioned that huge upset win they had over Cornell. It was the first time they beat Cornell in like 17 years.
Yeah, something ridiculous.
They won that game in a shootout, and now as conference play starts to ramp up a little bit more, you end this first half. I really think you need a win tomorrow night to really salvage this series moving forward in the second half.
Yeah, they play Delaware, just to be clear, when they come back on January 2nd. One game
their
against
first year as a program.
Robert Morris tomorrow, 3 p.m. puck drop for that game. Of course, the real draw, though, Syracuse men's basketball, they are not back in action until next Thursday, so 6 days from today. And, of course, that will be the start of that 5-game stretch of non-conference games. You know one of the teams that they're going to be playing in that stretch? Actually, 2. Stonehill and Mercyhurst.
Yeah.
Two
oh,
of
my
Syracuse
God. 2 women's ice hockey teams.
Common opponents.
Wow.
It all comes full
That should be in the
circle
game notes.
in the JMA Wireless time. I
Has to
agree.
be.
Let's get some collaboration from the Syracuse Athletics Department of Athletic Communications. That game is at 9 p.m. It'll be the second of a plethora of 9 p.m. tip-offs in the JMA Wireless Dome this season. Why? I don't know. TV reasons, most likely.
Monmouth.
But that means that McClurg Remodeling Countdown to Tip-Off is at 8:30, so make sure that you've got a cup of Joe ready. Stay up late. The Orange are exciting again. A win against Tennessee back on Tuesday. Now the momentum is on their side as they roll in towards ACC play. The double overtime after that game will go up until 1 in the morning with Adam Hipsky and Rahul Jaswal, who is our lovely producer tonight. And of course, they'll break down what will hopefully be a Syracuse win because the pressure will certainly be on. You can listen to that on 88.3 FM right here or on WAER.org. Some thank yous to hand out as well. Our producer, Rahil Jaswal, our engineer, Jake Klein, and our WAER Sports Talk desk of Corey Miller and Daniel Herzog working behind the scenes. We appreciate everything that you guys do. That's all we got tonight on Sports Night. Tune in, Syracuse men's basketball playing well. Lots to be excited about, but until then, we'll say so long from Syracuse. Good night.